This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We go from watching Patrick Mahomes' heroics to end off Sunday Night Football to watching Lamar Jackson with nothing around him, facing off with the Saints for tonight on Monday Night Football. We're going to break down that game from a betting perspective, get you ready for the Ravens at the Saints with Ryan Williams, and hopefully win you some cash to close out week number 9. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here once again by Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Ryan, I feel like I don't have to ask you how you're doing because Justin Fields looking pretty sick. And as a Bears fan, I feel like you got to be on cloud 9 today.
Hey, that's all we can ask for. I mean, we're on the up and up here. We got the franchise quarterback game changer. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Jim. Like, they just needed to design runs for him. And I'm happy to see that they do. So you love to see that. I mean, for me as a Bears fan, you love to see us trending in the right direction where we're able to right the wrongs. You know, so many times we've been, stuck in the ground in our ways, whether it was, Mark Trestman or John Fox or Matt Nagy, and, excuse me while I throw up. But, this regime with Luke Getsy, I really think that they took things to heart, took some time off and really just figured out what works for this kid. And you see it out there, and this dude's a gamer. Like, we saw that at Ohio State, but slow to adjust. But I mean, we saw this with Josh Allen, we saw this with Lamar Jackson, and maybe we don't crown him in that regard yet, but you can see the writing on the wall, and that just feels great for a Bears fan. We keep losing games, we'll get that better draft pick in the first round. Maybe team him up with a former Ohio State running or a wide receiver in the draft. They get some offensive line help. And sky's the limit in 2023, I feel like.
Yeah, my wife is from the Chicago suburbs, so she asked me how the Bears did, and I was like, oh yeah, Justin Fields broke the record for most rushing yards in a regular season game for a quarterback. Like, he played great, and it was super encouraging. Oh, they lost, but it was I had included that at the end because it was also exciting. He played so well, and it was fun to watch. I was on Twitter, and someone was posting a clip of him doing this 6 scramble. I was like, that was his third best scramble of the game. That wasn't even top 2 from the you're talking about the design runs. His touchdown, I don't think was a design run. The 61-yarder was there was chaos all around him. He got out of some trouble, kept on going. So it was a delight to watch. If we can have more fun quarterback play, I'm never gonna be mad about that.
Yeah, and some things you just can't teach, right? How many times on 3rd and 7, 3rd and long, this guy is back there dead to rights with the sack, and he does that spin move, which is going to be patented pretty soon. Looks like Allen Iverson out there when he and then he just takes off, and he's just so fast. I don't think we saw that speed last year or to start this season, and all of a sudden he's hitting the second gear, which is great. And I know that, not to beat a dead horse as we're talking about the Monday Night Football game here, but I know they say there's no moral victories, but that is totally out the window when you're talking about the Chicago Bears. If you can have a franchise quarterback like that, we can go through 2 years of growing pains for what the future looks like. This team was not expected to do anything this year. Their win total was at 6.5, 5.5 for some places. So we're just riding the wave right now and build on for 23.
Hey, fun football and a better draft pick. Couldn't ask for much better than that. We're going to break down, as Ryan said, the Ravens at the Saints for today to get you set for that one, breaking down traditional markets and the player props over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And we'll do that in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. We, of course, are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon, wherever you find your podcast, you can find us. Just search for Covering the Spread, hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Also up on the FanDuel YouTube page each day after the fact. Now is a perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Try out features like same-game parlays, play your way, and bet on more than just the final score. Wager on everything from touchdowns to total yards and catches, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So sign up today for your first no-sweat first bet. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. Refund issued is non-withdrawable free bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Kansas and Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700. And in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. Let's shift our focus now to this Ravens at the Saints game, where right now we got the Ravens as 1.5 point favorites. Total is 46.5. We'll break down those markets here in a second. But Ryan, first, I want your overall thoughts on this game. Ravens at Saints, where the Ravens coming into this game super, super banged up.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's the saving grace for Baltimore coming into this game is you look at the Saints and they're dealing with their own multitude of injuries, right, on the offensive side and the defensive side, I believe, too, with some pieces banged up. So, for the Ravens here, for me, it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. I mean, this team has absolutely, and we've seen it with a lot of good teams. I think the Rams are really bad in the fourth. We saw the Titans last night on Sunday Night Football. Their numbers aren't great. And the Ravens are the same way. They have, gone out to early leads here through the first three quarters, and then they just let teams back in the game because they can't do anything. So I think the Saints are actually one of the best offensive teams when it comes to the fourth quarter as well too. So this is going to be really huge. I think, the books are getting the line right. It opened at 1, Ravens favored by 1. Now it's 1.5. I know it was bet up to 2.5, but because of the injuries and everything that the Ravens are experiencing, the number went back down. So this is one where, you kind of do the heart versus the head, right? And Baltimore's actually had some success going against the Saints. I believe they're 5-2 all time against this team, and they're actually 2-0 in New Orleans against this team as well too. So they have a little trend working with them in their favor. If you do like the Ravens side, I think I'm going to tend to lean the over in this matchup too, because the Saints have, they found some offensive strides here, being able to put up 24 points in every Andy Dalton start. We're expecting to see him again, but the defense has also allowed 20-plus points to opposing teams in every game. So if we like, the Saints to be able to put up some points here in this game, Ravens to win, I think I actually like the over here.
Yeah. The total is 46.5 right now over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I want to keep an eye on the money line in this game. I think that's the key thing for me is keeping tabs there, because I'm not going to get to the spread in this game. I want to see if we continue to see movement towards the Saints, because I've got the Ravens win odds at 53.8% right now. And that's including the Mark Andrews injury. That includes no Rashad Bateman and stuff like that. So if we continue to see movement in New Orleans' favor, and we can get that across 110 and get it to like minus 107, minus 105, honestly, even minus 110, I might take the Ravens money line there. I am not seeing enough value right now at the money line being minus 120. I want a little bit more leeway to give myself margin for error to be wrong on my read on this team, given all the injuries they've got. So as we get closer to kickoff, maybe Jarvis Landry gets announced or something like that. And if that moves stuff towards the Saints, I could see myself buying into the Ravens. If it doesn't get to 110, I'm probably just going to stay away and be content to enjoy some football as opposed to sweating out that money line like I had to sweat the Bucs last night. So I want to see where it goes. Right now, though, I think that's the one place I could see myself getting into is potentially the Ravens money line if we get it at 110 or better.
Yeah, no, I think that makes, a good call. And even if you want to look at some, just because of how exciting they've been and how explosive they've been to start games, like if you want to look at Ravens first half numbers, when those get posted, I think that's an interesting lean as well too. But yeah, we're hoping for fireworks in this game, even without the key pieces. We've seen this with the Ravens, a lot of the time. And I think that's why the line has only moved a little bit, because I mean, Mark Andrews is great. I don't want to say anything ill about him and what he means to this offense, but like, they're going to throw out Likely there. It's not even that great of a matchup for a tight end, which we'll talk about later, I imagine. But still, with like even without Bateman, who hasn't really been healthy at all since week 1 or 2, it feels like they still have other pieces to kind of make things go on offense. So as long as Lamar's in there, we can expect Baltimore to do some of the same things.
So let's talk about those remaining pieces here. The Ravens are missing Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Gus Edwards he's doubtful for today as well. So that could open up some stuff on the Ravens side, in addition to the fact that it could just lower their offense overall. So when we take those pieces out of the equation, any props standing out for you on the Ravens side of things?
Yeah, I mean, especially the Gus Edwards one, because he came back in and just, looked absolutely explosive. And we know that the Ravens are still only giving the running backs limited work, right? These are guys that are going to see 20 touches. But Gus Edwards, through his career, has been, a great kind of yards per carry guy. Without him being there and without the goal line back opportunities for him, I do like Lamar anytime touchdown, which is at around plus 145, I believe, is what I saw it on the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's just such a great number for him when they get into the red zone. I think that people will think it will be, Kenyon Drake or things like that. And you hope that the run game could be going a little bit, because they're just apt to, run an RPO and let Lamar kind of figure it out himself. And anytime we can get that number, almost 1.5, plus 1.5 there, I gotta look at that. I'm also interested as well, just because in the grand scheme of things, I know the Saints, the Saints actually have allowed a couple rushing touchdowns already this year, which is, they're better on paper than they actually have been with their stats. But I still think they've been trying to be better on their run defense. And so Lamar Jackson passing as well, I think, is interesting. Over 1.5 passing touchdowns, you're getting at plus money there. We've seen him, be able to find the likes of guys like Likely, and they've tried to throw to James Prochet and Devin Duvernay's there. So if they are, able to hold them kind of in the red zone and get them into some second and longs, third and longs there, we could see Lamar passing a little bit more in the red zone. So I like getting his passing touchdowns too.
Yeah, the anytime touchdown one is, as you mentioned, plus 145. The over 1.5 passing touchdowns is plus 108 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get both those as of right now for Lamar. I did want to look at Justice Hill props, given that there is one less guy in the backfield, but there aren't any right now. I've checked a couple books. I've not found any Justice Hill props as of now, because Kenyon Drake will likely be the lead back for this team. But as you mentioned, they don't like to make one guy be kind of the primary option here. So Justice Hill, 21% snap rate last week. That was a game after he had a pretty crucial mistake. I think that was in week 7 where he had a really bad week 7, really bad fumble there. And I thought that he might get totally phased out, but still a 21% snap rate there, had 4 carries, no targets. But if you can get like a super low number on Justice Hill once it opens, I think he'll be involved for tonight. I do not expect this to be a full Kenyon Drake kind of game. I'd like that for one dynasty team where I accidentally had him on a roster still, but I think we could see some Justice Hill sprinkled in there. So once/if Justice Hill props wind up going up, I'd probably at least give them a look, because I think he'll be involved in some way. I don't think it'll be, just Kenyon Drake here. I don't think Mike Davis is going to get a ton because it's Mike Davis. So I would check out Justice Hill numbers. I did look at Isaiah Likely. You're not catching anybody sleeping here. He's at 40.5 receiving yards at some other spots. Like, that's not a low number. It's a fair number. I get it, but it's not where I'm looking to snag in over there by any means. So I would check out Justice Hill once those numbers are up. Let's flip it over to this. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say real quickly, Jim, the other thing about Kenyon Drake too is like he's very prominent in the receiving game.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at other books, and like you're looking at his rushing and receiving prop being at 60.5, but his receiving prop is only at 12.5, which is definitely just doesn't feel right. Like we feel like we got an edge there a little bit. 12.5. It is on some books like juice to 120. But I still kind of like that. And if you see some alt lines too, like I'd be willing to get it to like 15 or so, because that seems a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, Drake was firmly the passing game back last week. 4 targets in that game. Caught all 4 for only 5 yards, but like he was very involved in the passing game in that one. Let's talk about the Saints here. Jarvis Landry questionable heading into this game. They will not have Michael Thomas definitively here. No Mark Ingram either. The Mark Ingram absence last week did kind of open up things for Alvin Kamara a bit, but I think he was probably going to do that regardless. So what's your read on the Saints here with no Thomas and no Ingram?
Yeah, so just back to some of the same. I mean, no Thomas and no Ingram. It's fire up Alvin Kamara anywhere that you can. The anytime touchdown line at -110 on the FanDuel Sportsbook is absolutely. I just don't understand it at all.
It's my favorite bet of the game by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, I mean that is just like hammer town. I mean, again, I hate to say locks and things of that nature,
right?
Because we got another guy in there that I want to talk about. But yeah, this just feels right. If for some reason it doesn't hit, it's because they gave Alvin Kamara all this work last week and he's used up, and so we can't get the favorable. But it's just the fair number. You're also looking at his rushing and receiving yard prop, I believe around like 105 and a half, 106 possibly in some places. The only running back that I can see that has hit this number all season against this team is Nick Chubb. So I think that's an interesting line there against the Ravens. The other thing to talk about is Taysom Hill and what we get him at. Taysom Hill last week saw a season high in 10 carries. We know that they love to use him all around the field. Doesn't matter, it doesn't matter who's starting. Like this guy, this is why this guy has quarterback and tight end eligibility in some of your fantasy leagues. I'm interested in him anytime touchdown too at I believe +160 on the FanDuel Sportsbook is where we have him. It's probably not going to come out on the lines, but if we could get, a rushing prop on him or maybe some carries props, I would be apt to look into them because outside of, like you're saying, Alvin Kamara with these other guys, like I'm not going to fall into the Washington bucket or anything like that. Like it's going to be the Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill show that they've shown us all year long.
Yeah, Taysom +170 for anytime touchdown over FanDuel Sportsbook right now. So not a bad number there given the way he is used. And I agree that with no Mark Ingram, you could see him used even more because they want another bruising type back. And he kind of is that guy for the team right now. Going back to Kamara, the reason I loved the anytime touchdown prop at -110, and that's my favorite bet of tonight's game, is that he had the 3 touchdowns last week, but that was actually the worst red zone roll he's had in a while because he scored outside the red zone twice. He was very good. He played great. Leading into that, I think his red zone share on the season was like 41.8%. And that's a very good number. That's the kind you get unlike a top-ish end running back is around 40%. You'll get guys like 50% or so sometimes, but 41% is a very good number. So although it's frustrating to see Taysom Hill take away some goal line work from Kamara, that's a really good roll still. So when I opened it up with Kamara coming off a 3 touchdown game, I kind of thought we'd see him hovering closer to -130 or so for an anytime touchdown. I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll check it. I'm probably not going to get there, but I'll check it. He's -110 at FanDuel. He's -125 at a lot of other books. I think I saw -105 at BetMGM this morning. So, check around still, but he's shorter a lot of other places. I think that is the best bet in this game, unless we get the Ravens money line to be -107-ish or so. I would buy in there, but I think the Kamara anytime touchdown, Ryan, I agree with you, is like the best way to get exposure to this game right now.
Yeah, it just is not a normal number that we see for a lead back in an offense, in a game that's got a 1.5 spread to it with pieces missing. It just, I guess it's because of how the Saints kind of run their offense, right? Where it could be anybody any given day, which does frustrate them. But the way that they've been giving Kamara the ball, like you're talking about in recent weeks, is great. We can't, let's not bury the lead here. As I talked about Kamara and Taysom Hill, Chris Olave is an absolute stud. Like you can see why they wanted to get this guy on their roster here in the first round. And sorry, even the guys outside, I think, are a little bit. They're excited.
They're banging the table. They want the Olave props.
Exactly. So yeah, his prop is I'm looking at in some books, you're looking at over receiving yards of 63.5. This guy's not had under 50 since his week 1 performance, and that was his first game ever in the NFL. I think those are very interesting, and especially when you're looking at the way that the deep ball has factored in with these two teams. He has been, absolutely one of the best when you're looking at passes 20 yards or more down the field. And the Ravens are allowing the second most yards on pass attempts, 20 plus yards down the field. So, I mean, Chris Olave could be in a prime spot to just pop, even with Jarvis Landry, who's questionable. We'll see if he's going to play. It trended likely going into the weekend, but obviously he hasn't played in a couple weeks. So we want to see that come to fruition first. But I think any Chris Olave props that you can get behind are absolutely great. Baltimore is allowing the second most targets, third most yards and receptions to wide receivers. So smash spot for Chris Olave.
And I think Olave is one of the guys where you could also consider the alternate markets. We talked about that with, was it Marquez Valdez-Scantling a couple weeks ago, where they have a path to explosions, a path to eruptions, because Olave, like he gets 7 targets in a lot of games, but he also has games where he gets like 14. And with the deep balls that you mentioned, it's not just deep balls. Like he gets other stuff too, but the deep balls give him paths to having a bunch of yardage in a very short time span. So if you want to dive into alternate markets for Olave, he is a guy who can actually get there and do it in a pretty decent manner. I wouldn't be looking at catch props because he's getting a lot of low percentage balls, but yardage numbers like that yardage, when you mentioned 63.5, I think that's interesting, but also alternate numbers on Olave very much in play for this week. As far as touchdown props, we did talk about Kamara. We talked about Taysom Hill, plus 170, and the Lamar touchdown, plus 145. I'm not seeing anything else. I did check out again Justice Hill for anytime touchdown. He's plus 310, I believe, right now, 320. Not quite long enough to get me to buy in. Deshaun Jackson, his debut is 3-1. I did look. I'm not taking it, but I did look. Anything else you want to mention there before we close up shop for today?
I can't believe FanDuel Sportsbook. We're gonna have to look into this 3-1 on Deshaun Jackson, who hasn't seen action in a while.
2022. Yeah,
just baiting us. That's funny. I did want to quickly talk about this guy for the New Orleans Saints, Rashid Shaheed. Mm-hmm. He is plus 1,100 anytime touchdown, and that's all this guy does, right? Like I'm watching these island games with the Saints, and they are just drawing up packages to get this dude in space, and Dalton has hit him a couple times already this season. So he's an interesting one, especially if we get Jarvis Landry ruled out. I think that I might, take a shot on that at, 11-1 odds for him to score a touchdown when the pieces of who can score are pretty limited in this offense, right? Like outside of those 2 main pieces we talked about, or 3 main pieces, I guess, when you factor in Taysom Hill to Kamara and Chris Olave. But each week it feels like they've gotten him more plays and more involved into the offense. It's still in a limited fashion, but when we're talking about, anytime touchdowns and getting a good number, if he's going to be on the field, a quarter of the time, I'm willing to take a shot at 11-1.
Yeah. I mean, and they seem like they've been getting his role increased a bit because I think they realize that he's kind of fun.
Right. He is.
With a lot of teams, you'll see them use gadget type guys to get like a field stretcher in there. Like if the Rams had this guy, he'd have an 80% snap rate because they have no juice. Right. With the Saints, they don't need that because Chris Olave has juice, but I think they just kind of like him. And I don't blame them. He's kind of fun. So Shaheed is 11-1 to score a touchdown at FanDuel Sportsbook. I find that pretty interesting as well. Any other props or things you want to mention from this game before we close up shop for today?
No, I think that's all. I think it is it feels like we only talked about a handful of good pieces in here, and like that's what it seems like. But these are 2 offenses that I think, why I like the over is because they'll find ways to get some of these other pieces involved. Like they will make it work. Like we could see Marquez Callaway going out there without Jarvis Landry, and he'll get those targets. On the other side, James Prochet and Tylan Wallace, like they're just gonna find ways to get guys the ball and just move down. They don't necessarily always rely on their main pieces to get things done. So that's what makes it exciting for me and why I'm interested in getting the over here.
No Marquez Callaway tonight. Let's give it all to Kamara, please. He can have his time next week. I just want to get that Kamara anytime touchdown and we can be happy. Okay. So Callaway next week, Please. That is all that we have here on Covering the Spread for today. We'll be back once again tomorrow to break down NFL Week number 10, get a first look at that, and also recap what went down this past week. Another good week by Ryan. So we'll recap that on tomorrow's show. Hope we can close it out on a good note for Monday night as well. Get that by subscribing to the Covering the Spread podcast feed and the FanDuel YouTube page. Ryan, I appreciate the time as always. Good job again this week. Good luck to you on Monday night to close out things, and we'll talk to you once again Thursday for our Week 10 full preview.
Sounds good. Good luck to you, my good friend, and all our friends out there listening. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That is Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. I am on Twitter at Jim Saunas. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets for Monday Night Football. Let's get that Kamara touchdown. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to recap week number 9 and look forward to week number 10. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.